Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel for episode 7 of Dark Fun in the Dark Sun, also known as the one where we muster an army. But seriously, war is coming, so we need to get ready for this. As always, if you have no idea what's going on, make sure you check the link there and down in the description box. And with that, let's get into the session. So we had 5 players at the table for today, and again, we do have a character tree going, so I'll just list off all the individual characters we had. So we had Salantithius, Raylan, and Sage, Drudok, Halvar, and Najila, Vashti, Kadan, and Regal, Nibbles, Little Jenny, and Kilbig, and then Lord Jackhammer and Shoji. So I talked to the player who plays Lord Jackhammer and Shoji, who used to play Bardock, and he says that at this point, he doesn't think he needs to roll up a 3rd character, so he's just gonna go with 2. So first things first, Sal, Shoji, Nibbles, Vashti, and Najila all go to find Templar Styan to let him know that Hasselval is up to no good and has been trying to replace him with Garyrus. So when we tell him this, he's not surprised, and he says that we should probably go talk to Garyrus on his own, because without Hasselval whispering in his ear, he might tell us what's actually going on. So we do that. So we go up to Garyrus's house, and he is like laying on a dais, looking all resplendent in his uniform, and Hasselval's there as well. And so he approaches us, he's like, listen, I'm here to speak on Garyrus's behalf. And he thinks that Shoji is there to support his bid to make Garyrus the general of the Templar for the army, which is not at all what's about to happen. So Shoji immediately goes like, buddy, you're under arrest because you're bribing officials and you're also undermining other Templars, so I'm gonna arrest you. And it fails miserably. So then Hasselval tries to arrest Shoji, and it fails miserably. But then Najila puts a grasp on him, and so Shoji's able to get him in the manacles. Salantithius goes and takes Garyrus away and starts to kind of ask him questions to get a grip on what's going on. And he realizes that Hasselval duped him. And he's like, yeah, Styan would be like such a great leader. That's awesome. This guy definitely doesn't have the greatest mental capacity, and you can tell him anything you want and he will agree with it and then think it's his own idea. So from there, we take Hasselval back to see Styan. Somehow, and I don't know how, our cannibal hobbit Nibbles and our bard assassin Vashti get deputized as Templar, and Shoji gets promoted to sergeant. So I feel like that's gonna go terribly wrong. I'm sure there will not be a great misuse of power and title coming up. So after we drop Styan off at the local jail, we head back towards House Largeton. And on our way, we get to the market, and there is a huge crowd gathered, and there's a ruckus, and we're trying to figure what's going on. And so Shoji's like, come on, Templar of mine, let's go deal with this. And he just gets really loud, and is like, you guys are all breaking the law, I'm gonna have to kill you all. This is really not the best way to go about things. But we see that Syntha's Emporium is being blocked by this crowd, and so there's 12 mercenaries around the Emporium trying to keep the crowds out, but there's also a counselor there. He is a counselor representing the craftsmen, like Salantithius, and his name is Counselor Turloff. So the mercenaries have grabbed him because they figure if they get him out of sight, the mob will stop freaking out and disperse. But I really don't think that's gonna be what happens. So we decide to try to stop this situation. I managed to get some of the merchants put to sleep, and Najila manages to use like this weird mind wall so that half the crowd can't see what's going on. They can walk through it apparently, but they can't actually see or hear what's going on the other side of it. From there, we managed to wade in, and Shoji arrests Turloff because that's what Shoji does. It's his thing, arresting people. And Salantithius, who represents the craftsmen, manages to say, you know what, listen, I will go with them. I will make sure everything's okay. Please disperse. But we're going straight to King Tithian instead of going to the jail, which I think worked out really well. And so we get to King Tithian, and Shoji's like, oh, I've arrested this counselor. And Tithian's like, yeah, is it about the price gouging? So he knew what was going on. Tithian says that he will bring it up at the council meeting the next day, and also to please let his counselor go. He also asks us to send word to Lord Jackhammer that he needs a bill written up about the merchants. And so everyone goes back to the house, and then Salantithius stays to help write the bill with Lord Jackhammer, and Raylan joins this group, but everybody else stays the same. So you've got Shoji, Vashti, Nibbles, Najila, and Raylan, and they're all going out to the warrens to look for this human scion named Param, who basically seems like he's in charge of the sleeper cells, which, if you remember, are the people that are trying to be like, just give in, let the army invade you, it'll be fine, you'll be free. So because we have Vashti and Nibbles with us who lived in the Warrens, they know the back paths. So Raylan casts Pass Without Trace on all of us, so we're able to get around, and then we hear two people talking, and we listen on them, and we're like, that's probably Param, because he's talking about sketchy things. And when we come around the corner, we see that he's talking to a Templar. Templar Rack, to be exact. So we get into a battle, which could have gone really terribly because Param is a scion, but we had our own scion, and we actually knocked them down pretty quickly. We knocked them both out, even though we discussed as a party that we should probably just kill a scion because scions are terrible, but that didn't happen. And so we bring them back to the jail, and somebody thought it was a smart idea to wake up the scion, and things got crazy, and we almost died, and thank God we had Najila, because she was able to just destroy the scion with like a lightning leap, which basically like just shocked him, and then she like leapt through him. It's pretty cool. So when they interrogate Templar Rack, he's not really that helpful other than saying that Param was the leader. So we have in fact cut the head off the snake, so it probably won't be a problem anymore. So at least we can chalk that up as a win, as we licked our wounds, because a lot of us almost died. So the next day it is the council meeting, so Salentithius, Lord Jackhammer, Halvar, Regal, and Little Jenny all go off to the meeting. So first things first, Senator Turex comes up and he's like, how's this investigation going? And we're like, crap, we forgot to talk about that. And we're like, we're still looking into it. The bill that Lord Jackhammer wrote with the help of Salentithius was introduced, as we're calling it a War Measures Act. So basically the government's going to seize the resources in exchange for bonds and future profits. And Lord Jackhammer's like, either you pass this or we choke you. Those are your two options. And so it passed. So that's good. After the meeting, Aegis approaches us and he goes, listen, we are running out of time to get our army up and going. You need to name somebody in this investigation. I don't care who it is. And then he also tells us that Senator Travalis is willing to contribute people to the army and help, but he wants something in return. So he wants us to go find out what that something is. After we've left the council meeting though, and we're on our way back to House Largeston, we get approached by three people. They're bards, and they're like, listen, we hear you've been making trouble. And then they want to fight us. Well, Regal kills one almost immediately, and then he goes, I hope not, son. I taught son better than be bard. And it wasn't him, so that's okay. One of the bards tried to charm two of our half-giants to think that he was their friend. It didn't work. The second one did manage to pull it off though, so it got really sketchy there for Salentithius when he killed that one, because the two half-giants were like, we need to kill you now. You're not our friend. So Salentithius is just gone. Nobody tried to convince the half-giants though that, you know, they'd been charmed. And my personal thought was they're too stupid to realize or to understand, so we're just gonna have to wait till this charm runs out in an hour. Meanwhile, Raylan, who's a druid, has decided that Nebuchadnezzar might be helpful against the army that's approaching Tyr. So she sets out into the army with a group of people. With her is Little Jenny, Regal, Najila, and Lord Jackhammer. And like, why send half-giants? Why send two half-giants? This was a water nightmare, but we got through it. So on the first day out in the desert, we run into Melanda and Asenath, who are of the Veiled Alliance, and I'm like, hey, Melanda, cousin to these Largesons, can you come with us? Because I feel like it'll be a good idea if we have other magic users with us. And she's like, if you have water and food, I'll come. And we were totally covered because as much as it was a nightmare, Raylan can produce enough water for almost the whole party. And so with other people bringing water, it worked out. The next day, we're traveling and we come across a sandstorm and it is brutal. And then we come across a cactus. But I wasn't playing Salentithius, so all was well. Raylan is not afraid of cacti. And as we're examining this cactus though, this man wrapped up in like a bunch of different sand wraps walks up to us and gestures for us to follow him. So we follow him and we get to like a little oasis where the sandstorm isn't so terrible. And when he removes his head wrap, it turns out it's Nebuchadnezzar. So Raylan explains to him what's happening and says, listen, we don't need you to come into the city. We just want your help defending the territory out here. See if you can mess up the army before they get there. He was pretty hesitant because, as you know, he's a jerk, but he realized that the potential of having another Sorcerer King set up so close to him was not so great, and in exchange for his help, we would try to help him find a volcano so he could get up to the moon. Which I think is a pretty good exchange because I want to go to the moon. That'd be pretty cool. And then after that agreement is made, this crew starts to head back into the city. Meanwhile, back in the city, Sage, Shoji, Halvar, Vashti, and Nibbles are all going to see Senator Travalis to see what it is that he wants. So we get up to where he lives, and his servants won't let us in, but they say, why don't you go meet with him at Calix's Demise Inn in the Elven District? Because like he wants to be very covert, he doesn't want to have this conversation with us or even be associated with us. Well, we get there, and while we're sitting there, a human comes in, and this human is Senator Travalis' son, who happens to be Senator Verassi, who has been like a plague to us for the other 2 campaigns that we had. But here we don't really have a beef with him yet, but what he wants from us in exchange for his troops is for us to just completely go mess up and destroy the Frayed Lava Estate. They don't want us to kill people, they just want us to destroy the crops and everything else, and once we do that and basically destroy this family, they will provide troops. Sage was the only one who was into this because she is all about destroying and wrecking everything, and nobody else wanted to do it too. So instead, guess what Shoji did? You guessed it, Shoji arrested Senator Verassi, which can't be a good thing. And so we bring him to jail, and then we go speak to his father to see if Senator Travalis is more interested in talking to us now. And basically the agreement works out as this, like, do you know what your son was doing? And he's like, I had no idea what my son was doing, which he totally did. But we're like, you know what? We can get him out of jail, make this super discreet, nobody has to know, as long as you commit your troops. And so he agrees. So that worked out really well for us. The next day, there is another council meeting, and this time we have to come up with the results of this investigation. So Salentithius and Halvar went, but because Lord Jackhammer, Regal, and Little Jenny weren't there, they sent envoys in their stead. So Shoji showed up, Vashti showed up, and Nibble showed up as well. So Senator Turix once again asks us for the results of our investigation, and so we just start blaming people. We blame Bardock because Bardock left right after Calix died, so I mean, that seemed kind of suspicious. And so Tithian issues an arrest warrant for him. We also blame Perem, the scion that we already killed, so I mean that one's dealt with. And Hasseval, because he's a jerk, so he's gonna get executed. And then we say that we investigated Senator Turix, the jerk who's been pushing this investigation, and said that while we couldn't definitively say that he did anything, we also couldn't completely prove his innocence. So now he's gonna be like under 24-hour guard from some Templars, so that worked out well for us, and he was not happy. He was pretty huffy. And when asked if the Veiled Alliance was involved, we said no, there was no evidence that the Veiled Alliance had anything to do with Calix's demise. After the council meeting was over, Tithian asked us to meet him in his chambers again, which is not at all suspicious and doesn't seem like that was a scam investigation, and says, hey, can you get Lord Jackhammer to write a bill to decriminalize the Veiled Alliance, which I mean is super important, especially as we're going to war. It'd be nice if the Veiled Alliance could openly fight with us. And so we do that, and part of that bill includes that they can sell their magic services to people, but they will have to pay a tax, which will be awesome because the city of Tyr needs to start filling its coffers again. And then finally, the time comes for us to assemble and muster and get ready to march to war. A messenger comes around, and luck of the draw has it that Shoji is the most charismatic fighter, so Shoji is in charge of our troops. And he's able to appoint us all aides, which he does. So we have a lot of really random aides, but I'm sure this will work out fine. In total, based on all the things we've done in this campaign so far, we end up with 240 men. We get 40 gladiators total, 20 Templars, 10 noble guards, 70 soldiers from Senator Vildine, 40 from the Minotaur family, which was Senator Travalis' family, 40 merchant guards, which is also awesome because they can build works that we need, like trenches and all that fun stuff. And then 20 dispossessed, which like I said equals 240. So we have a decent sized crew here. Counselor Turloff comes up to us, the guy that was getting arrested by the mercenaries that we saved, and he says, if you need anything at all that I can provide, let me know. And Regal obviously goes, son, I need my son. Senator Turix shows up and threatens us, but I mean, he's got like his guards with him, and it's, who cares? But then as our supplies show up, we find that they're pretty terrible. The food isn't the greatest, the water kind of smells weird, and all the weapons that we get, eh. And it turns out that Master Syntha, who is a merchant, is just not letting good supplies come to us because of that War Measures Act that we helped pass, and because of us, you know, dealing with his mercenaries out in front of his store. So Shoji orders the large sins to go and find out what's going on. So you've got Kilbig, Halvar, Lord Jackhammer, and then Regal goes as well, and Sage. So you have 4 half giants and 1 halfling, because that makes the most sense. But honestly, like, I feel that this is where Sage fits in the best, is with the big, giant, violent guys, because she's small, tiny, and violent. So it's a pretty large disaster, as you might imagine, with all these larcenies and other half things. And Killbig just starts destroying the store and then smashes his way through the building, and then they find Master Syntha. And he's like, listen, everybody's getting the same food, the same supplies, and like, he just keeps getting slapped. Every time he tries to say something that isn't, yes, I will give you better supplies, he gets slapped, he gets slapped, he gets slapped. And so finally, we're gonna get good supplies. He says he's gonna send us a bill for all the damages we've done to his place, and Halvar's like, huh, like we're gonna pay that, but you know, I'm sure we'll get the bill. The next day at dawn, it is time to march away from the city, and so we do, and after a day's march, Shoji is invited to the tent where the generals are, so you've got Rikus, Diane, and Senator Gisela, who does not at all seem interested in this war. Even Styan doesn't really seem to want to listen to Rikus. So the people that go with Shoji are Halvar, Kadan, Little Jenny, and Raylan. Basically, Rikus wants to send out scouting parties to just kind of see where the approaching army is and give us a little bit of warning. So it's agreed that Shoji will be in charge of those parties. With that, because we're doing landmark leveling up, we leveled up to level 9 and ended the session. Alrighty, so things are getting pretty intense, as you can see, and it's just a matter of time before full-out war happens. I'm really interested to see too what Nebuchadnezzar is going to do to help, because he could just be a complete jerk and just not do anything, because that would be pretty much in his MO. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this recap of the session. If you did, make sure you hit the like button down below and also subscribe so you'll know when the next one comes out. With that, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.